Everyone, we are live at lunchtime today. Attorney Abigail Molina with Molina Immigration, where we melt the fear of ICE. And just waiting for people to come in. Please put your questions in the chat, and I'll be here for about the next 40 minutes. Hopefully you've had some lunch. I just ate lunch. Usually I forget to eat lunch before I come on here, and then my brain gets tired trying to think through the answers to these questions without any food, but I was smart. I ate some lunch today. Come on in and tell me what you had for lunch. I had some flautas, yummy, which is basically just like a fried tortilla with some chicken inside of it. Okay, so I wanted to talk about Lindsey Graham's announcement yesterday. I don't know if you saw my TikTok video about it. Lindsey Graham is a senator, very Republican, very MAGA, very Trump BFF-y. And he announced yesterday that he's introduced legislation to end birthright citizenship. So we're going to talk about birthright citizenship. We're going to talk about what that looks like. He also said that he is going to begin the process to change the Constitution. And I don't know when the last time the Constitution was changed. I don't know the exact date. I know it was a long time ago. We haven't had an amendment in a long time. So we'll talk about what that might look like, whether or not that's possible. Trump was also talking again about ending birthright citizenship. So I'll talk about that a little bit today. And the basis of it, and as Lindsey Graham was saying, that we're one of only a few nations in the world, and I need to do a little bit more research so I can have some more data, but that not every country in the world offers what is called birthright citizenship, which means that according to our Constitution, the 14th Amendment, anyone who was born on U.S. soil is a U.S. citizen. And not all countries do this. I think it's unique to us, but I think one of the reasons why we had it was because we are a country of immigrants. We are a nation built by immigrants. So if you were to say only people that have, ancestors back so many generations are actually citizens, then none of us would have ever been citizens, because only Native Americans can say that, right? This land does not belong to us. It was stolen, obviously, from immigrants who came here. Or it was stolen from natives by immigrants who came here and settled here. So that is the whole point of birthright citizenship, is that if you were born here, you are a citizen. It doesn't matter where your parents came from. And in fact, if Trump's heritage had not had the birthright citizenship, then he wouldn't be a citizen either, because I believe his grandfather was an immigrant. So this whole concept of you have to have parents here or somehow otherwise be worthy of citizenship, that's the direction that our country has been heading and will continue to take leaps and bounds towards in the next 4 years. Because as we've seen, there is now this overwhelming sentiment and rhetoric that immigrants are coming from places that are undesirable, coming from countries where they're bringing crime, they're bringing disease, they're stealing our jobs, all of these lies, right? This is the rhetoric that has been built up. And now people are starting to see, well, if they come and then they have children here, then now those children are going to have a say in our future. They're going to be able to vote. They're going to be able to make decisions. And like I've said, our vote is our voice. And so to take away citizenship from people based on, where their parents were from, or whether they meet some kind of categories or qualifications, that's a problem to me. That's a really big problem. So I don't know what kind of legislation Senator Graham is talking about. There is nothing that can be done through Congress that would change the Constitution. There's a whole nother process that has to take place for that, and involves the states, and involves, a very big majority of Americans agreeing to change the Constitution, because it's no small thing to change our Constitution. But that's where we are. That's the latest announcement, was that Senator Graham yesterday is talking again about birthright citizenship, something that Trump has also been talking about. So we're going to be watching that. It's not something that's going to change overnight, but it is a big concern for many people that have children here, whether or not they could like take away citizenship from those children who were born here based on their parents not having, not being from here. So that's something we're definitely going to be watching. But let me get into some questions and answers. If you have any. You're right, Liz. So the 14th Amendment did have to do with slavery, and that was a part of the, the whole civil rights, and even, well, slavery was ended before civil rights. But so if the fact that African-American slaves were not considered citizens, they couldn't vote, they couldn't own property, they couldn't, have any kind of freedom, was because they weren't considered citizens, even though they were born here. Many of them were fathered by the slave masters. So all of that ties in to provide birthright citizenship once slavery was ended, and then we needed to be able to establish the rights for people for slavery for slaves post slavery, for individuals who were born here. That's where the 14th Amendment came from, and that's how it got established. But now it applies to everyone, right? It's not just applying to former slaves. Thank you for pointing that out, Liz. Right. So user blah 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 was asking if it can be retroactive. That's what we don't know. There's so many unknown things. I mean, this is unknown territory. We've had this in our Constitution for a long time. I wish I could pull data out of my brain and know these dates, but it's been in our Constitution, and changing the Constitution is not something that's going to happen overnight. And we don't know, like, how far back are they going to go? Will people have to prove that they are actual citizens through their parents? How many generations will that go back? I mean, it just starts getting really a slippery slope, because like I said, Trump only has to go back a couple of generations before he can't prove that his heritage is here. So it'll be very interesting to see that. All right. Adjustment through a citizen's son. You're waiting on receipts. Can you be detained in a raid while waiting? I've been wanting to make a video about this. I've been meaning to make a video kind of directed towards employers, and also to help people who are working as an employee in a workforce to know what their rights are, and also for employers to be able to provide a safe place for individuals coming to work. If they care, right? And I used to think that these raids were, before I got into immigration, I used to just think that they, just happen out of nowhere. It was a big surprise for everyone. That it was a surprise for the employer, a surprise for the employees. And come to find out, spoiler alert, it's no surprise to the employers. And in fact, the employers are negotiating with ICE, with the government, because there are all kinds of fines involved if you are employing undocumented workers. And especially if you're knowingly, and if you're doing it repeatedly, and you have many of them. So these places where large raids happen, it's because the employers are working together with ICE. They're cooperating in order to, have, it's a negotiation basically to reduce fines and fees, because there's also actually can be jail consequences, penalties. Criminal penalties is what I'm trying to say, if it gets to that extreme. So there's negotiation involved in this, and it's not just something that happens overnight. This is planned out well in advance. So if you are in a place that does not seem to care about the employees, and because maybe they're not talking about this, maybe they haven't brought this up yet, I would be careful. Because it's, like I said, ICE is going to know who is in the in the business who's undocumented. And so if you're undocumented and you're working there, if you have your adjustment filed soon, you will have a work permit. Usually takes about 4 to 6 months to get your work permit once you filed your adjustment. So this person asking the question already filed the adjustment of status. So assuming that that all gets approved, you should be safe soon. But in the meantime, waiting for your seats, that still doesn't provide you with the ability to work. It does provide you with a legal status while you're in process, but you could still get picked up in the mix, right? So one of the things that's important to know, your rights when you're in the workplace, and if there is a raid, you still have the right to remain silent. And ICE cannot arrest you unless they have reasonable suspicion, unless they have some evidence that you are undocumented. And if you open your mouth and you start talking, you're going to give them all the evidence that they need. If they ask you for identification, you're not required to provide that in a workplace setting. If you run, obviously that is going to be evidence that they will use as reasonable suspicion to assume you are undocumented. So user, hopefully that answers your questions. You should get your work permit soon in the next 4 to 6 months, but it may not necessarily protect you in the event of a raid at work. Okay, Samantha, your husband did the advance parole and you sent the final papers in mid-October. Any idea how long? Are you saying he left on advance parole and then you filed the adjustment of status in October? Excuse me. They've been taking about 6 to 9 months for approvals on the I-45, the adjustment of status based on marriage. If you've been pending since October, so maybe under usual circumstances, maybe by early summer. But what we are anticipating once Trump takes office is that things will begin to slow down, take much longer. Also, possibly some requests for evidence, make sure that you have like your medical exam ready to file. Hopefully, if your husband did advance parole, that probably means he still has DACA. Make sure that you renew that DACA well in advance. Even as the adjustment of status is ongoing, I still recommend that people renew their DACA because, as you know, if you let it expire for more than 1 year, you're not going to be eligible to renew it in the future. So even though you have that adjustment of status application pending, you never know what might happen in the relationship, or if the spouse dies, you want to still be able to have that backup plan. Kenzie, if one of the parents was born in the U.S. and the other parents weren't, there's a whole series of laws that surround that. It depends on what year the baby was born, but basically it requires showing that the parent who was born here was here for a specific amount of time, usually some part of the time before the age of 14, part of the time after the age of 14. So it just depends. It also depends if the parents were married when the child was born. I mean, it's a very complex area of law, very, very complicated. I always have to look at the chart every time that I go through that. It's not something that you want to like commit to memory. But yeah, so if they decide to take away birthright citizenship and it begins, like, well, if you're brown, and then you can do it if these set of circumstances apply to you, or if you're from certain countries, these other standards will apply to you. I can just see it getting very messy. Another user saying that you can't go to another country and have a baby and be citizens there. Right. So that is, Lindsey Graham was bringing up this thing called, I think it's called birth tourism or something, where a lot of Chinese immigrants are coming over to have their children here. It doesn't automatically give citizenship to the parents, right? Because the child has to be 21 in order to even start an application for the parents. But it does give kind of a foot in the country and gives certain rights to the baby that's born here. So that's exactly what Lindsey Graham is saying, is that there's many countries around the world where you can't just go and have a baby and that baby is then a citizen. I think these are the kinds of questions, these are the kinds of topics that why people voted Trump into office, because they're feeling a certain way about people coming here and having babies here, and those babies now becoming equal to them. And I think it's important that we have these conversations, and that people really start to begin to dialogue about why they're feeling a certain way about that, right? I feel a certain way about immigrants because I believe that immigrants make America great. But obviously, about half of the country feels a different way about it. So I think that these are questions and topics that we need to begin to be able to have conversations about. Sherwin, can you go in and out of the country with your addit form or stamp? So you're probably talking about the stamp in your passport that says that you're a permanent resident. As long as your passport's valid, that should be fine. If you're waiting on like a new green card, sometimes those can take a while. I have noticed we've started doing more online filing, and we got green cards within a couple weeks or a month. Whereas with the paper filing, it was taking like years to get a new card. So you might try doing that if you've been waiting too long for your card. Harleen, what if your U.S. citizen spouse is in jail? Can you go to an interview alone? I've never had that come up. I haven't had that come up. I don't know. I don't know the question to that answer. I don't know the answer to that question. Sorry, guys, my brain, I don't know if it's like I've been sick for off and on for a couple weeks, but please have patience with me today. Is it safe to travel on advance parole? I think it's safe before January 20th. I'm going to wait and see how other people travel after January 20th. Samantha, you're talking about you've already done the medical exam and you sent the pictures. So not just pictures, for proof of your marriage, make sure that you've sent like things that show that you guys have bank accounts together, that you own things like cars, houses, property, whatever. You have kids together, that your bills are all going to the same place. Those are the kinds of things that they're looking for. Pictures are easy to just like create and be fraudulent, but what they're really looking for is that you guys filing your taxes together. So those are the kinds of things that they're looking for. A lot of people asking if they're okay. I'm sure that everybody wants to know, like, am I safe? Am I okay? Someone has, you say RPS, but I think you mean TPS and I-130 approval. You filed your I-45. Yes. So you're in process. You should be fine. But but here's the thing, right? Technically, we can say that people should be safe. They shouldn't have a problem. But we don't know what's going to change, and we don't know what rules are going to be followed, what rules aren't going to be followed, what new rules are going to be created. So you're definitely taking the right steps. People that are saying that they filed, that are in process, you're taking all the right steps. Hopefully you also have an attorney on your case. Hopefully you haven't filed it on your own, because we're just expecting change after change after change starting January 20th. And you're going to want somebody that's responsible for following those changes and alerting you if something's going to impact your case. It's man, you filed an R1 for your wife, your father-in-law passed away. What are the chances of expedited? So is your spouse here or abroad? If you need an expedited advance parole, you can call to get an info pass for that, but you need to make sure that you're talking with an attorney. Because, for example, if she's adjusting status here and she has already accumulated more than 180 days unlawful presence, she should not be traveling on advance parole. Deanna Lewis, when you have the adjustment of status, it's at the decision stage. How long before they make a decision? It could be, I mean, we're seeing like, and it depends, right? It depends where you filed. I'm in Oregon, so most of our cases go through Portland, the district office there. It's usually taking about 8-9 months, somewhere around there, for a final decision. But depending on if they've given you a request for evidence, what you've responded to, it could take them a minute to do that. Candace, can you file a K3 after the I-130 is approved? So the K3 was created because I-130s were taking so long. The K3 is a non-immigrant visa to get the person here faster than waiting out what was taking a long time on the I-130. Since its creation, now they started taking basically the same amount of time. There's no filing fee for it, so you could file it and see which one goes faster. But basically, once your I-130 is approved, you might as well just move forward through the National Visa Center and the interview to just finish it. It'll be better, because if you come on a K3, then you have to do an adjustment of status. So there's more paperwork once you get here. You can't work right away on the K3. You have to get your work permit. So I don't think I'd recommend it in your situation. Thanks for the question, Candace. How bad is immigration visa under administrative process with Trump 2.0? I love that people are also using Trump 2.0. I've started doing that too. Administrative process is scary because the person is outside the country. They've had their interview, they've done the medical exam, everything's been filed, but for some reason, the consulate wants to take a closer look, and they don't tell you what they're taking a closer look at, or they might. You might have some hint at what they're looking at, and it can take months, and it can just sit there. So at some point, you have to file a lawsuit to get them moving forward. I would expect everything's going to slow down under Trump. Everything's going to be subject to more scrutiny. So as far as administrative processing at the consulate, that's what I think is going to happen there. At Tatui, thanks for asking about the recruitment process. As you can tell, we have kind of an extensive process, and we did receive lots of resumes, but we are still hiring. We haven't filled all the positions yet. So keep in touch and keep the hope. It's man came back on, your wife's abroad, your father-in-law passed. So, because she doesn't have anyone to care for her, maybe in her country. Is that why you want to expedite it? Since her father died, you can, if you're working with an attorney, you should talk with your attorney about that. If you need help, you could give us a call, 541-653-8899. There's definitely ways to get things expedited, especially if there's safety concerns or health issues. You can get also the congressional liaisons involved to help push things forward, if that's the case. Jane, prima facie determination. Have you filed like an I-360? That's usually where I see that that notice coming in. That means that they took a quick look at it, and on its face, it looks approvable. And so usually with a VAWA application, they'll send this notice and say, hey, we're still going to do our regular processing on this, but everything looks good. And you can use that determination to go get public services, public benefits, food stamps, welfare, those kinds of things. So that can be super helpful. You just did your interview 3 weeks ago and you haven't heard anything. Online it's saying interview is scheduled. That's interesting. Did they tell you at the interview if they were going to be submitting it to a supervisor or if there was any issues that they're going to be looking at? Usually when that happens, they just need to finish some processing on it. 3 weeks is not that long, so I would not be worried about that. Martha, thank you also for submitting your resume. We are, as these two are noting we are still processing all the resumes we received from about a month ago after our cry for help. Sandra, you had a question about an I-220B. Are you talking about like an appeal form? I'm not sure what that form is that you're referencing. Sigma is also asking, will we hear back? I'm sorry, guys. I have one person assigned to this. Actually, my dad stepped out of retirement to even help my one assistant that's processing these resumes. She also has many other responsibilities. So we're doing our best. We are trying to start scheduling some interviews. So that should be the next step if you're applying. Appreciate your patience, everyone. También hablo español. Si hay alguien aquí escuchando en español, se puede hacer las preguntas y puedo responder. Estuvimos hablando hoy, cuando empezamos, estuve hablando sobre el Senator Graham, que anunció ayer que está en proceso de presentar legislación para terminar el derecho de ciudadanía para personas que nacieron aquí. Y esto me parece muy extraño, pero es igual lo que ha dicho Trump, que él también quiere terminarlo, acabarlo, aunque todos nosotros recibimos nuestra ciudadanía de la misma manera. Los que no son nativos aquí, o sea, americanos nativos, indios, no somos de aquí, no nacimos aquí, entonces nuestras familias de muchos años no son de aquí, son de otros países, incluso Trump también. Entonces, el terminar ese derecho que está en la Constitución va a ser algo difícil, no imposible. Entonces, yo estoy mirando muy seriamente que esto puede ser posible. No sabemos si sería como regresando cuántos años o sería empezando desde ahorita y para el futuro, pero va a ser muy interesante. Estamos en una dirección, estamos caminando hacia una dirección, un nuevo futuro. Y no es algo que yo estoy de acuerdo con esa dirección, pero no es solamente mi decisión. La gente, los ciudadanos aquí votaron y según sus votos, ellos están diciendo que quieren cambiar la manera de cómo va nuestro país, la dirección de nuestro país. Entonces, quiere decir que va a haber cambios. Entonces, vamos a tener que esperar a ver cuáles son los cambios que hacen, que se pueden hacer. Y los que no están de acuerdo, nosotros también tenemos nuestra voz y tenemos que usar nuestra voz para votar y para hablar y quejar si no estamos de acuerdo con lo que está pasando políticamente. Martha, you have experience as a recruiter, willing to volunteer to help out. Please send another email with that information. We definitely need some more help in our recruitment department since we have half of a person in that. Jane, you want to file for VAWA. Oh, so you were asking about the prima facie determination. Yes, if you also, that prima facie determination can protect you from deportation. So if you haven't filed for your VAWA yet, you should definitely do that immediately. We are seeing those prima facie determinations coming in like 4 to 6 weeks, super fast. It used to take a lot longer. So definitely that would be a great way to get protected right away. We also are starting to see interviews for VAWA, looking at potential fraud issues. We have seen definitely an increase in VAWA applications, not only our office, but I'm sure that USCIS in general, a lot of my colleagues are filing a lot more VAWA applications based on like abuse through U.S. citizen kids, parents, spouse, all of that. So I think what we are seeing now with these interviews starting to happen is just a concern. Are these all really legitimate? Are they, are any of them fraudulent? So be prepared that you will likely have to go to an interview. We're starting to prepare our clients for that as well. Make sure you're working with an attorney to prepare your case as strong as possible. It can be difficult to have evidence especially if you don't have like a lot of physical evidence or like a police report. There's many different kinds of abuse, and it can be hard to show evidence of that. So make sure you're working with an attorney to establish that. Good question, Jane, but definitely want to get that filed. Don't rush it. Make sure you prepare it well, but get it filed as soon as you can. Voy a estar aquí como 5 minutos más. Si tienen preguntas en español, me las puede hacer. Hice un descanso, estuve enferma las últimas 2 semanas, entonces estuve haciendo, no estuve haciendo tantos videos. Y ahora estoy notando que estoy fuera de la onda. Estoy preparando presentaciones, incluso mañana alguien me pidió un favor de presentar sobre derechos, qué hacer si se encuentra con inmigración, si se enfrenta con inmigración. En la casa, en el carro, en el trabajo y en público. Entonces estoy haciendo una presentación mañana, pero estoy preparando mis propias presentaciones para poder poner en mi canal de YouTube. Y tal vez también estoy pensando hacer unos eventos virtuales para personas que quieran hacer preguntas sobre sus derechos. ¿Qué se debe de hacer para estar preparado por si acaso tiene problemas con inmigración? I was asked to do a presentation tomorrow, a Know Your Rights presentation. I'll be doing that online. I don't have the details, otherwise I would share that, but I am going to multi-use the presentation that I worked on last night to share on my YouTube channel, and also possibly do some virtual events to talk about what the rights that undocumented immigrants have and how to use those, make sure that they are exercising those rights with, and if ICE comes to the house or at work or out in public. So as I said, as I always say, people have rights, but if you don't know what they are or don't exercise them, then you won't know how to use them. Marta, ¿cómo se puede proteger una persona que está aquí ilegal o indocumentado, pero tiene negocio propio? Tal vez esa persona tiene opciones, debe de hablar con una abogada de inmigración. Nosotros ofrecemos una llamada de descubrimiento que es gratuita, entonces llámanos 541-653-8899 y para ver si tiene opciones. Entonces tiene que empezar primero con una consulta para saber si alguien tiene opciones o no. Esto es el primer paso para protegerse. Marta, por si llega a ser deportado. Entonces, personas que tienen familia, que tienen negocio, que tienen algo importante, que tienen propiedades, casas, lo que sea, tienen que tener un plan. Entonces, el primer paso es hablar con un abogado de inmigración para saber sus opciones. Segundo paso es hacer un plan. ¿Qué se va a pasar? ¿Qué se va a suceder? ¿Quién va a ir por los niños si alguien está detenido? ¿Quién va a abrir el negocio o cerrar el negocio si alguien está detenido? Entonces, yo siempre digo que personas que están documentados, que el mejor trabajo es trabajar por sí mismo, tener su propio negocio, porque no es necesario usar documentos falsos. Se puede obtener todo el negocio en su nombre legal, aunque no tiene estatus legal. Entonces, es algo muy bonito. Siempre hablo con, hago clase aquí local en la comunidad de personas que quieren empezar su negocio y siempre les animo porque es un sueño americano tener estatus legal aquí, pero también, en mi opinión, el sueño americano es tener su propio negocio. Entonces, siempre estoy animando. Lucy, give us a call, 541-653-8899. Martha was asking what someone should do if they have a business and they're undocumented. The first thing that people need to do is talk with an immigration attorney, see what options they might have available to them for legal status. Not necessarily because they are business owners, but there might be some options there. We tend to dig a little deeper than other places to try to find some creative arguments that maybe other people aren't finding. So give us a call, 541-653-8899. The second thing that people need to do, anyone who has anything important in their lives, whether it's a business or a family or properties or whatever, is to have a plan. What happens if, and it's for all of us, right? What happens if somebody gets sick suddenly or dies suddenly? Who's going to take care of the kids? Who's going to take care of the business? A deportation or a detention could be considered the same thing. It's just important to have a plan and to make sure that everyone's aware of what that plan is, to know where documents are, all of those things. So it's just thinking through like worst case scenario, natural disaster or whatever. It's all the same thing. Marta está preguntando si esa persona debe de conseguir un socio que está aquí legalmente. No es necesario, pero debe de tener alguien que tiene acceso, si sea su pareja o un amigo, que puede accesar sus cuentas de banco y seguir con su negocio si desea o cerrar su negocio si sea necesario. Lucy, I think you're asking for the phone number again. It's 541-653-8899. El número de teléfono aquí, 541-653-8899. Thanks everyone for joining. Gracias a todos los que vinieron para estar conmigo aquí, Lunche en vivo, live at lunch. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you guys tomorrow around the lunch hour, and bring your questions, and I'll see you then. Thanks, everybody.